And this leads to big fun. And so really what I think we need to do to not only save ourselves from spending too much time on debugging, but also to become part of a larger platform is try to get to a world where we have some kind of a unity, at least from the developer's point of view in our runtimes, that we don't require people to reach for C++ when they have to do something that they think is performance critical and can't stand object overhead. And you know, JavaScript, SpiderMonkey is bytecoded. There's never been a cycle performance problem. No one's tried to implement something too numerically or combinatorially intensive. But there's been mainly memory problems, and they have to do with the cost of objects in JavaScript. And probably there's been some premature optimization, but as I say, all our front end is in JavaScript, and when you click on a UI element and you profile the cycles, the time spent in the interpreter is 1% or 2%. It's nothing. The real problems are debugging and the breadth of the platform. So here are our needs, and I'll need a hug afterwards. I think that the main thing is we want to get support for multiple languages. Languages, have followers who follow fashions and also have pros and cons that motivate use of them. But we're not going to pick one. We'd like to support many. I think this is like .NET. I think that was a good move. And because we already do this bridging, we'd like to support even more transparent mixing. So you should be able to extend classes. You should be able to mix things freely. And one of the problems we have that we haven't really dealt with, though I mentioned it in that leak graph, in a particular sense with JavaScript and C++, but in general with these languages, if you connect their heaps, you're going to have sort of a distributed GC cycle problem. And we haven't got a solution for that, though. For a long time we've had a plan. I missed David Rowe's talk, but Robert O'Callaghan sketched this when he was at CMU, which was to do a super GC and sort of plug all your subsystems in and have some extra protocol. We've never done that, and if we do federation, I guess we should. We find, and this is something you see in the industry all the time, that people push things beyond their limits, and so we like suited performance. Security in the browser is really beyond the scope of the VM, but we want the VM to be robust and secure, and also have some support for a notion of the identity of the executable code you're running, and a way to distinguish that from objects, sort of a subject-object relationship that you can check. So a capability model. In our experience, it's best to make privilege something you enable transiently, and it goes away when your stack unwinds, and so we'd like to have that. We're still struggling. I think the world is struggling with a better trust model. People, have access lists and trusted site lists and all sorts of zones, and it's not scaling well. There's lots of social engineering attacks. There's fundamental problems in the network protocols, and then your server is almost vulnerable when you least expect it. And there's no way to revoke trust from the server side if you know the server's been compromised. So we're also interested in something that we could gain from the VM there. I'm not sure we'll get it, but it's on our list. And the real thing is here, we're not trying to do everything. We have done what we've done for historical reasons because we had to. There was something better at the time, but we would love to be part of a larger platform. It would have to be open source, and if it were the VM that we used, or a set of VMs that were federated, that would be great. There's some tricky stuff at the bottom about royalty-free patent licensing. We actually need royalty-free redistribution too, so probably not going to get it. A lot of politics there. This is probably wrong, since I missed David Grove's talk, but I start with harping on the negatives. We've been here, we've been doing, in a sense, this bridging, this federation. We've been paying some prices for it that we're kind of tired of, so the grass looks greener the other way. On the other hand, bridging is going to happen anyway because people have their own needs. I think the Java XPCOM bridge that people in Austin are doing is for Eclipse, for instance. And the Mono bridge is being used, I believe, by other folks already, or will be used shortly. So we'll probably have both federation and unification, if we have unification at all. I think, you know, having been around since the old days when people talked about ANDEF, and I had some weird Springer Verlag book on virtual machines in the early 80s that was promising this utopia that's arrived finally. It's great we have Java, we have .NET, Mono. Why can't we just use one for all our languages? Well, I think it has to do with business reasons mainly. But we'd like to. And to be fair, I think we could have used Java if it were open source. If it had been open source, I think it would have been integrated better in Mozilla. We would have been able to turn around fixes faster. We could have switched to Rhino, perhaps. Python will be there. That didn't happen. Maybe it's not too late. We have just, you know, the most mundane issues with Java. Like, it's a plugin, so you want to get a fix. So you have to talk to the folks at Sun in Beijing, and they're good folks, and they communicate well. But then you have to wait till next year for the new release of the plugin. And because there aren't complete test coverage suites for testing the integration with Mozilla, you then find that that has some other bugs. So it's just not integrated well because it's not part of the same open source process. It's not the same community. Mono is ramping fast because it does have a great, sorry, I'll give you that question in a minute. It does have a great community behind it, and we have this Mono bridge already under construction. Go ahead.
When you say Java isn't open source, I'm not quite sure your definition. Do you still believe that, or is that a statement of the past? Is that a historical statement?
It's not open source according to the OSS, or whatever that outfit's called now, definitions, the OSI. I'm sorry, I can't remember these names. It's not open source according to the standards that our own open source license, the MPL, is held to. We don't have the same ability to redistribute it. We don't have the same access for our members or our community to fix a bug quickly and to read the code. I mean, I have not paid attention to the Sun community software license in a long time, but it did not meet the approval of those who would certify open sourceness regarding licenses. So, and you know, the proof is in how the communities work. We have not had, you know, we have GCJ from the GNU folks, and it's not industry strength. We couldn't substitute it in Mozilla for the commercial VMs that are plugged in. And the commercial VMs don't all interoperate the way they need to. It's not just a matter of JNI. There are these extra plugin interfaces I mentioned, these ad hoc interfaces. It's like having a sort of a Flash player plugin with a whole raft of extra stuff to do Java things. And there's not a good standard there. And in the absence of a good standard, you'd like the code to do the spec, but we can't get at the code and hack it, and there are different, in fact, different bodies of code implementing JVMs. So I hope that gives you an idea of why we've had trouble with Java, which I like. I mean, the marketing people stuck Java at the front of JavaScript, and so I'm a Java fan. But anyway, if we did Mono, we'd have Java through IKVM. You know, we'd have Iron Python, we'd have C#, we'd have JavaScript in some form or other. I haven't looked too much at Parrot. I early on had some hopes, and I kind of stopped looking because it seemed very focused on Perl 6, and it's still a dark horse. But we're trying to get something done soon. We need something that's already there. We can't really wait too long to make this move, but we're going to try to move toward a unified VM. And of course, you're free to still federate and plug in and bridge later. So how do we satisfy our needy needs? Technically, I think, apart from patent fears and license politics, we would go with Mono right now if we had to pick. As I say, Java could make a comeback, but again, if we're seeking unification, it's probably Mono. On the other hand, I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So we'll probably end up federating and bridging and paying some prices that are hard to evaluate against, you know, the opportunity costs. What could we have done if we didn't have to build these bridges and maintain them? Could we have had more people hacking faster and higher and doing great apps or better platform features if they weren't down in the trenches doing the low-level code. I don't know. I wish we could. I think having done this several times, you get kind of bored with this old bridge building. It's time to stand on the shoulders and not fall off and climb up again. So that's about all I had to say, and I can certainly answer questions.
Could the problems with Java be solved by a better definition of the interface between Mozilla and the various VM implementations? I mean, the fact that each VM has dragged their own things in to get their job done shouldn't impact what you do. Is it kind of the graphic context and, you know, focus problems that you're having?
There's certainly that, but we don't have a different interface for each VM. We have a set of interfaces that may be poorly documented or not. People have managed to plug Java VMs into Mozilla and do usual Java things, mainly applets, which aren't that common on the web compared to other web standards. So they're just